So today we're going to be covering the UK's plan for solo geoengineering, which is essentially, the most basic way to explain it is they're going to attempt to try and block out the sun. And you might be asking why, but to understand why, we kind of have to backtrack to what they're actually trying to address. So, regardless of how you feel about it or whether or not you believe it's real, they're attempting to address something called global warming. And global warming, or at least the standard definition to my understanding, is like the long term rise in Earth's average surface temperature. It's like due to an increase of, they call it greenhouse gases, but it's referring to like CO2, so carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. Goodness. And the idea is, since they've done experiments over the last couple hundred years, they've seemed to observe that for some reason, when carbon dioxide mixes with water vapor, it retains heat more. So they believe that all the carbon dioxide or the CO2 that goes into the atmosphere is getting retained by the water vapor, and that this is essentially making the Earth heat up more because it's retaining more heat from the sun. Right? Does that make sense? Um, so they think it's a combination of all the fossil fuels that we're burning, the deforestation, because if you deforest an entire like area, then you have less plants to use the CO2 to convert to oxygen. The ice caps melting, and this one was interesting because I didn't really see what that would have to do with anything, but apparently the claim is that the ice caps help to reflect some of the sunlight back. So with the increase in the Earth's temperature, with them melting, they're not reflecting as much sunlight back anymore, right? And then they have the industrial agriculture, which is like methane from livestock. And the evidence they kind of use for this is like satellites that they have like above Earth, where they kind of like to detect like less heat escaping to space, and seem to witness that the lower atmosphere is like warming. And they also, like, as far as like tying this to the CO2 levels, they take like samples from Antarctica, like ice core samples, and take air bubbles from this that are around like 800 years old, 800,000 I should say years old, and these seem to show like significantly lower levels of CO2. Right. So, like I said, you might have contentions or want to debate whether or not this is true or the problems with these experiments, like the logical problems. But regardless, this is the kind of like the evidence they're working with, or the basics of it. Okay. So the next question that I thought would be wise to address is, does the Earth's climate actually change naturally? Like, does it go through natural cycles of fluctuations? And the answer is yes. So there are several, I think, different examples of like an ice age taking place where the Earth cooled for a long period of time. Tectonic shifts, like the plates shifting around, also can alter the global weather patterns. Volcanic eruptions can do this as well. And we also experience something called solar cycles, which essentially affect how intense we get sunlight, or what the intensity of the sunlight is, right? So the main difference they would say, though, between this happening naturally and over time is that the over time supposedly is supposed to happen from like 10,000 to 100,000 years. And they believe that this rapid change is taking place over 150 years, which is like significantly faster than like the natural cycles, right? And so the conclusion they came to is, especially like with the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, is that maybe it has something to do with that, right? So other questions that like I asked myself, so it's a little bit of a tangent, but I'm going to mention it anyway, is well, what about all the stuff that they're doing today? Like, for example, all the satellites in the atmosphere. Does that damage it? Because the way I look at it is, there's a lot of complaints about how we need to do all these different things to try and be more environmentally friendly, but they keep shipping up satellites into space or into the atmosphere. And I'm like, how is that good? So it's not actually. And there are two aspects to it. There's something called black carbon that it releases when they're first launched, which I think can like damage the atmosphere. I don't know if it thins it or something, but it does something to the atmosphere. I forget what it does. I don't have my notes, so unfortunately I can't tell you. But I think it has a similar effect essentially to when CO2 is just released into the atmosphere in general. And it also affects the chemistry of the ozone, which I think is probably, it doesn't really go into specifics as to what it does, or I wasn't able to find it, but it just says it affects the ozone's chemistry, whatever that means. So each time the satellite gets launched, it does that. There's also something called light pollution. No idea what this actually does, but because there's a bunch of lights, artificial lights coming down on us from all these satellites, I think it's something crazy. Like I think it said, I saw somewhere where it said like 40,000 satellites are in orbit from SpaceX and others, which is like an insane amount in my opinion. And then when these satellites come back down, they also bring a variety of pollutions as well. So the next question to ask, aside from that tangent, that I thought would be like interesting is, were there any efforts to actually reduce carbon emission over the last 100 years? And the answer is yes. So kind of, I think from like the 1900s to 1950s was like the Industrial Revolution, right? And there was like no environmental regulation. Time went on. I think basically there was like smog and acid rain in a lot of these like factory cities. So in the 1960s, the U.S. releases an U.S. Clean Air Act, which is like an attempt to tackle the smog and acid rain, but not quite the CO2 yet. Then the 1990s and 2000s hit, and that's when the major innovations in clean technology kind of come out. So you figure the solar panels, hydropower, which uses like dams, the wind turbines, geothermal energy, which uses the Earth's like internal heat, electric vehicles, and energy efficient tech, carbon capture and storage, and then like natural agriculture and solutions. I'll probably, editor, please keep this in mind. I provide a table, but I'm going to provide a table of all the stuff for you so you can look at some of the different impacts. But the biggest problem is, it seems like, in my opinion, that the more Western countries are attempting to implement this and the other ones are not. So I think it's pretty obvious to say, at least I'm from the States, so at least for in the States, they kind of pushed all the factories out, and it seems like the world kind of outsourced their production that they were using for these factories into other countries. So like, for example, the air quality in China is terrible. Like there's a reason why they're walking around with masks all the time. So while I think that these are all good contributing factors in reducing it, it's none of this is going to work because like I saw something else that was crazy, like China producing like 30% of the carbon emissions, which is wild, but I understand because they're running factories 24/7, basically producing all the resources for the world. So I don't know if they actually solved the problem that well or if they just pushed it to another country. But the problem, nevertheless, is the only way this is going to work is if the whole world does it. If the whole world converts to this energy, then it will like significantly reduce it. It can't just be like a couple countries at a time. Because you can think of it like this: it's like tenants that live in a building. If someone in their building has roaches and it's an infestation, everyone else is going to suffer, and there's nothing they can really do about it. Because no matter how much you try, if you're a different tenant in that building, they're always going to come back because they have a safe haven, right? So it's kind of like that. There's nothing you can really do if you're just one country doing it, since it's the whole world, and they'll still damage it from the other side. So that being said, that's like global warming. These are like the attempts to curb global warming. And the next question I have is, because it seems like global warming seems to have heavy ties to climate change, or at least in these discussions. So one of the things I came across that was interesting is it possible to change the weather with technology? And the answer is yes. So apparently there are different things that people use. The one that's been public, at least for a long time, like since 1967, has been something called cloud seeding, where they essentially take an aircraft and spray like silver iodide and potassium iodide or salts into clouds. And it's essentially used to like make it rain. And it was used during the Vietnam War. I don't remember for what purpose. I think it was like to flood them out of something. It was pretty bad. But the reason why this is concerning for me is because it's when you want to sit here and talk to me about climate change from global warming and the Earth's rising temperature, but you're literally manipulating the climate by throwing metal in the air. And I guarantee you, I'm sure that's not healthy for you. It seems odd to me. That's just me though. And I also think that like a lot of these times there's been like rumors of like those jet streams that you see in the sky. Like some of them look like jet streams and other ones look more like a wide spray that's like spreading out. And again, it's hard to tell because like everything like this is almost always labeled a conspiracy until it's not. Like till the CIA declassifies some files and everybody's just like, oh yeah, that's what happened. I'm pretty sure that's like those planes spraying the silver iodide into the sky. But like I said, I didn't study that part. We're going to get back to the actual topic of this video, which is the other form of weather change technology, which is solar geoengineering. And it's technically still experimental. And that actually brings us finally to what the UK is doing. And what the UK is doing is they're using something called stratospheric aerosol injections. And the goal is to reflect particles from the sun by spraying sulfur dioxide or calcium carbonate at around like 10 to 20 kilometers, right, in the sky. And the problem is there's a couple risks for this, even to the ozone. Like it could disrupt rainfall, it could thin the ozone, or it even like it's something called termination shock if stopped, which basically means like if they start this, get the Earth used to it, and then immediately stop. I think it just like it doesn't say break the Earth, but it basically like provide. It's like Earth destroying material. Like you just destroy the environment essentially. Now that's just for the atmosphere. For humans, sulfur dioxide is toxic and can provide respiratory illnesses if inhaled for prolonged periods of time. They're also talked about using calcium carbonate, which is less toxic but still causes like similar issues. And upon further investigation, I'm pretty sure like sulfur dioxide is an ingredient they use when they're trying to make something to dissolve human flesh. So, or to break down bodies. So again, I don't understand why they're spraying this in the air, but we'll get to that after, I guess. And the other technique that they're going to be trying to experiment with is something called marine cloud brightening, which is also very, very concerning because this involves spraying seawater aerosols to brighten the low-lying clouds. And the idea for this is like I think to attempt to replace the ice caps that are melting with clouds that will help to reflect the sun. And the problem with this is that this has unpredictable weather shifts. It could probably pollute the marine life, especially if there's like salt and plastics wherever they're getting this from. And chronic inhalation of fine salts can also cause like lung problems, so it's bad. And this other part, which I didn't see in my research, but it's like such an obvious thing to me as well. Like, what about the crops? It will probably mess with the crops too, or that aren't used to salt water. And the problem with this, like I said, which we're going to get to next, is they're doing these experiments outdoors. So you can't control what's going to happen once it gets into the air. So the best they can do is predict where it's going to go, but you can't control it. Like once it's out, it's out. It's going to go where it's going to go, and it eventually spreads to the whole world. So doing these, I don't know who sanctioned this. Like it's kind of crazy. It just says the UK, but in my opinion, it's like the stuff they're doing here could literally just destroy the world. Like I don't know if you're Christian or not, if you're like watching, but there's I think it's like Revelation 8:11 or something like that, where it says that a third of the water will become essentially like undrinkable. And I swear to you, this is if that were to become like a literal thing that was supposed to happen in the end times, I could totally see it being something like this, where they're basically just poisoning the clouds. Like I don't know what else to describe it as. So at first, when I was looking at this, I thought surely this must only be like a research grant, right? They wouldn't actually be trying to deploy this. And it is a research grant, but it's a research grant with permission to do it in quote-unquote small-scale outdoor experiments with strict controls. So the problem is it doesn't matter if you just spray a couple of this stuff into the sky. You can't control where it's going to go after it's released. Like, the winds are going to move the particles globally over time. So I don't even know how the countries like around them are cool with this. I guarantee you they're not. But it's like, unless you're willing to go to war over it, they're just like, oh, I don't know if they're willing to go to war over it yet. So that's what they're doing in the UK. Like I said, as far as my take on it, I can't possibly see the logic behind this. Like, it's such a obvious thing where you should say, you know, maybe if you inhale these things over a prolonged period of time and it's going to cause you severe lung issues, maybe you shouldn't spray that in the sky. Or saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't make the rain salt water. I feel like that's for pretty obvious reasons. You'll destroy your crops. You won't be able to eat anything. So again, I'm not exactly into this whole, like, even when I was researching this, I kept coming across like people saying we don't support depopulation theory, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, why do they keep saying that? And I'm not going to lie. I can see why people believe in a depopulation theory. Because after a certain point, I honestly can't understand the logic behind this of poisoning not just like a water supply and a local environment, literally the atmosphere's clouds with sulfur dioxide. Like, why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense. So I have no idea what's going to happen from here. It's like, it's literally not within my control, obviously, to stop something like this. But I don't even know where you go with that. Like, I don't know what steps you take to be like, guys, we need to stop this. This seems like a really bad idea. Like, I don't know who signed off on this either. But, again, what can men do against such reckless hatred? I don't know what else to say. But, so that's what's going on in the UK. I'm going to try and keep you posted on that. Very concerning. But let me know what you guys think in the comments.